Hi, I'm Scott with Prime Health Services and Prime Corrections. And when I'm not hosting with Sheriff Stanek, I wanted to take a few moments and talk about our offsite inmate medical cost containment solution. So if you're running a jail and you have to take an inmate offsite for medical treatment of any type, have you ever paid full bill charges for that expense? Hopefully not. But if you have, let Prime help you out. So what we do every day, we receive many bills. I'll give you one example of a bill we just processed this week. This was for a county in Florida. This was for an air ambulance treatment. The total bill, $53,256. Through our scrubbing process and negotiations, we were able to reduce that bill down to $8,447.26. That is, that's a savings of 84%. So if you are looking to save on your offsite inmate medical expense, contact Prime. You can reach us via a link below. You can also send an email directly to corrections@primehealthservices.com. That's corrections@primehealthservices.com. Let Prime show you and let Prime help you save money. Thanks and have a great day. And we are back. This is Scott as the Badge Turns podcast, joined each week with my co-host, Sheriff Rick Staly, and very special guest, Sheriff Rick Staly from Flagler County, Florida. Sir, glad you could make it. I appreciate you taking the time. And, we're going to take the next 30 to 45 minutes and just talk about your life, what you brought to the badge. Certainly, we're going to get into some details about what Prime has been able to be of service to you in the county. We'll dig into that a little bit earlier, But by the way, you would think I've done this before. Yeah, I went on vacation. I forgot how to talk. But welcome again. Glad you're here as always. So, how are you? Yeah,
it's good.
Very good. So, let's just start from the beginning. I know you've had a storied career in law enforcement. So for our viewers, because we do the video aspect as well as on audio as well, and you can catch us on Spotify and YouTube and wherever you can stream. So it's going to be all over the place. This will be posted in a couple days. And while you watch and listen to it, you'll know it's posted because you'll be able to watch and listen to it. But take us through kind of what got you started in law enforcement and led you to the path of where you are today, Sheriff.
Well, I think I was always interested in law enforcement. I kind of grew up in a single family home after age 11 and became what was then called a youth deputy. It would be the Explorers today. And so they became kind of my father figure, if you will, because my father really was not in my life in my middle to early teen years. Although he was a Winter Park police officer for a very short period of time, but did not make that a career. So I guess that's, kind of how I got interested in it. And I'm actually, this year is my 50th year being sworn in the state of Florida. I started at age 19. I was one of the first 19-year-old police officers in the state of Florida. It's kind of comical as I look back at it now, because the city I started out was a very small city. Nobody wanted to be in law enforcement in that era. It was the winding down era of the Vietnam War. A little bit similar to, what we see today, actually, but for different reasons. But Oviedo Police Department provided you uniforms, but they did not provide your gun and ammo. So actually, my dad had come back in my life and he had to buy my first gun and ammo. So here I was, a 19-year-old cop that could use deadly force legally on any felon back then. We're talking 1975. But yet I couldn't go into the store and buy the firearm. So it was kind of, ironic. But so I started in Oviedo, small municipal town, 1,900 population. I went to the city of Altamont Springs a year and a half later, which had a population of about 14,000. And then in 1977, I joined the Orange County Sheriff's Office, Florida, which is the Orlando area, all the theme parks, those kind of places, as a deputy sheriff. And I went there for a pay raise to a huge $10,300 a year. What really got me as a young cop was that take-home car, right? So I had a great career in Orange County. We had a very progressive sheriff that hired me. I was able to get my bachelor's degree while working full-time at the sheriff's office, promoted through the ranks, and ultimately became the undersheriff in Orange County, Florida. At that time, Orange County was the 13th largest sheriff's office in the nation and the fourth largest law enforcement agency in the state of Florida. So it's a very big metropolitan sheriff's office. When I started my career there, the sheriff ran the jail, but about midway through my career in Orange County, the county took the jail. So I was the undersheriff of basically a law enforcement municipal style agency, full service. And I was promoted, through the ranks. I had a really great career there, with the exception of being shot on duty. 1978, I took 3 rounds saving the life of a deputy sheriff. I'm only here because I was wearing a protective vest, my own that I had purchased. Otherwise, I would not have survived the impact to my chest, I'm told by the ER doctor. So,
What year was that, Sheriff?
well, it's one of those things you never forget.
Yeah.
July 31st, 1978 at 10:20 in the morning. It was a, run-of-the-mill disturbance calls. And I think what's important is that no matter how minor the call you might be going to, this changed into in 13 seconds, it changed into a deputy involved shooting and myself being shot. And that's just how quick things can change.
No,
Well,
absolutely.
Well, kudos that you survived and come back and continue your public service
Yeah.
career. It's absolutely amazing.
So I received the Governor's Medal of Heroism for that. I would encourage all your listeners to not do it the way I did it. It's nice to get it, but it's not really what you want.
Right.
Medal of Valor and Purple Heart and those kind of things, awards. But I continued my career. I had some mentor sheriffs along the way. I worked for 4 different sheriffs before I became a sheriff, and went to the FBI Academy, got my master's degree, went to the Southern Police Institute Administrative Officers course. So I had sheriffs that invested in me. And I retired from the Orange County Sheriff's Office in 2001 and stayed a reserve deputy and went in the private sector for 12 years, where I ultimately had my own security company and sold it to a national firm and thought I had retired for the second time. And I was asked to be the undersheriff of Flagler County, where I had moved. So Flagler County, for your listeners that aren't sure where that is, it's about 30 minutes north of Daytona Beach, about an hour south of Jacksonville on the Atlantic coast. Beautiful community, about 110,000 residents today. I'm sorry, about 110,000 in the city of Palm Coast, 140,000 in the county, and a very supportive community for first responders.
Good.
So I became the undersheriff for 2 years. Decided the then sheriff was not somebody I could work with for a variety of reasons, and I retired. And my wife and I are in a 43-foot motor coach traveling America. And the community started calling me, asking me to run for sheriff. And frankly, I was a holdout. I said, I'm not interested. Community leaders kept calling me, and finally the local newspaper called me and said, we really need you to run for sheriff. And I said, I think I'd make a good sheriff, but I don't want the hassle of getting there. Campaigns can be pretty nasty. And he asked me, have you seen who's running for sheriff? I said, no, I'm in Montana in my motor. And he asked me, when will you be back? I said, about 2 weeks. And he said, before you close that door, will you at least look at who's running for sheriff? And I said, okay, I'll do that. So I got back and started looking. And at that time, there were 8 different people running for sheriff. And frankly, it was a cast of characters. And I won't go into all that. But ultimately, my wife encouraged me to run for sheriff. And here I am starting my 3rd term, and I was reelected unopposed in 2012. When I ran for sheriff, this agency was in turmoil. It had a sheriff that the community did not like and the agency did not like. And he had been an attorney, never been a cop. And just made a lot of mistakes. Fortunately, I never had to run against him. He lost in his own primary, and so it made it a nicer race towards the end than it probably would have. And the first thing I did was I met with, during the transition period when I was sheriff-elect, I met with every employee and every volunteer. And I said, I had a list of questions I would ask each one. And a couple of those questions were, if you were the sheriff, what is one change you would make? And then I'd ask them, what do you like most about your job? What do you like least about your job? And then I took all their input, and based on my experience in Orange County, I knew what this agency should have been doing. Because Orange County was a very progressive, very large agency. And so I created a vision for the sheriff's office, explained it to all the employees, and I said, now let's get to work. And my job is to support them, get them the tools that they need, staffing. This was a very underfunded, understaffed agency when I became sheriff. Now we're a cutting edge agency. Agencies come to us to see what we're doing. A real-time crime center I would put up against any agency in the country with the technology that we use. Our jail now is an award-winning jail. It's known officially as the Sheriff Perry Hall Inmate Detention Facility, but I nicknamed it kind of as a joke when I was sworn in at my acceptance speech, the Green Roof Inn, because it has a green roof, and it just kind of took off in the community as that. Nobody wants me to change it. So, but when I came in as sheriff, the jail itself, which has a capacity of 404, we've had 330 as the high number in my jail. We're running around 200 a night now. They were doing nothing to try to turn inmate lives around and have them become productive citizens. And while I'm a tough law and order sheriff, and I pride myself in that, if myself and my team can help an inmate turn their life around and become productive citizens and not come back into our jail, that would be my preference. And so we've won lots of awards for that. We're a 5-diamond accredited agency. The jail is accredited, law enforcement's accredited, communication center is accredited, our jail medical is accredited, and we have accreditation in ethics. I pride ourselves what the team delivers. Our crime is down over 50% in 8 years. And we didn't have a lot of crime to begin with. And that is rarely we have a violent crime. If you exclude domestic violence, that's a scourge across America. But, when you talk about homicides, sexual batteries, the real serious robberies, crime, it's very rare that we have that. So to drive crime down, majority property crime is pretty good.
50 years of service. I mean, you have seen so many changes. People come and go, administrations, trends in law enforcement, catchy trends. Maybe, I remember back some sheriff's offices would wear sport coats and turtlenecks because I thought that was a cool trend. I don't know if Florida ever did that. It failed miserably across the country, things like that. Tell us about some of these trends you've seen and what became of them.
So I'll just kind of start with equipment. Okay. So when I started in 1975, we were carrying revolvers. If you were lucky, you had a speed loader, which probably most of your listeners won't even know what that is. And you carried batons. And when I was shot in Orange County, so this is 1970, we did not even have portable radios. We only had a car radio. And as a deputy sheriff, we used to tell the city police who did have portable radios, if you want to be a real cop, come to the sheriff's office because you got to fight your way back to your car to call for help. And how two big agencies kind of dig at each other. And and back then, you were writing reports by hand, carbon copies, paper, and those kind of things. Leap forward now, all the reporting is basically digitized for the most part. There's computer aided dispatch. There is a records management system that's all technical now, and all done by computer. My cars all have car cameras. The deputies have body cameras. Everybody has a taser. Training now, we're using virtual reality training. That's just phenomenal. We now issue, semi-automatics. When I worked for Oviedo Police Department, their CAD system was a 3x5 index card. It was typed in alphabetical order. So law enforcement has changed a lot. We have protective vests now. When I started my career, they were just coming out, and I purchased my own, as I mentioned. So, there's been a lot of changes, and I've probably only brushed on the surface of what has gone on in 50 years. And by the way, my wife said I can run again in 2028, so I guess I'm going to keep doing it.
Okay.
I was telling Scott last week with one of our guests that I used to think fax machines were pretty cool. When faxes came out and I was a detective and I'd get a faxed photo of somebody, a faxed picture, and it was one step above a stick figure.
Right.
And they all looked alike on a fax. I mean, you couldn't tell the difference.
Well,
That was then.
The old teletype machines were like, like a Western Union telegram printed out on dot matrix and stuff. And of course, now it's all electronic and done over the internet or the cloud and sent electronically. So, law enforcement has come a long way. I want to touch, though, on that topic about the policing methods. Okay, if you don't mind.
Please. Yeah.
After I got shot, I started teaching in a police academy. And I think what was going on was that we were teaching order maintenance. And then along came community policing. And community policing was a good philosophy, but the academies were still teaching order maintenance. And so you had this disconnect between the academies and then what the police chiefs and sheriffs were trying to implement. In my agency today, we use what I call guardianship policing. It's a hybrid of community policing because I will tell you, I think a lot of agencies fail or don't understand what really should be community policing. And I'll point to some of the cities around the country that have burned down because of riots. And probably every police chief that had a city burn or damaged in a riot will tell you they were doing community policing. And I would tell you they're not, because if they had community policing, they wouldn't have had those issues. They could have prevented them before. And usually, I've been in one riot in my career, and that was in Orlando. And what I learned from that is that it might be a police action that triggers the riot, but the underlying causes of socioeconomic issues, and it blows up because of a police action, which is exactly what happened in Orlando. And the other thing that I learned is that for 3 days, the sheriff, the then sheriff, and the then police chief of Orlando kept the deputies and the police officers in handcuffs. We weren't allowed to do anything. So we watched cars burn, businesses burn, just your typical riot zone that you see today. And the sheriff and the police chief decided to go tour the riot zone. And they took a brick through the windshield, and the glass cut the sheriff. And guess what? Handcuffs came off, riot was over. So what I've learned from this is that if you don't take immediate action when these incidents start to occur, it's only going to encourage those individuals, those anarchists, if you will, to go. And so, we had the Black Lives Matter marches in my county. And so we had people undercover in with them, but we also had people that were visible on a bicycle that would help them get across the roads. We had water that we could give them and stuff like that. But what nobody knew was I had about 50 deputy sheriffs, all in riot gear, ready to go at our emergency operations center. But I never had to deploy it because we engaged the community first. But I wasn't going to tolerate any disruptive behavior in some of the more recent demonstrations that we've had over immigration and those kind of things that have just recently occurred. I made it very clear to our team That the minute they start blocking any traffic, they go to jail, period. And we didn't have any problems. I would encourage police chiefs and sheriffs to, really look at how they respond. And, I'm fortunate. I'm in the free state of Florida. I'm a constitutionally elected sheriff. I report to the people and no one else. And so unlike a police chief, I don't have to go ask for permission, and I don't work for a city manager or a county administrator. I'm totally independent. The voters can change me out every 4 years. They just reelected me unopposed, only the second time in the history of this agency. The only other time was in 1968. So, I think they like what I'm doing and what my team is doing. The only other person that can remove me is the governor. And so that allows me to be a law and order sheriff. And fortunately, I'm financially secure, so I can make the right decisions for the right reasons and not worry about politics. Now, I would be disappointed if I don't get reelected and running. Okay, don't get me wrong, but it's not like I would be financially devastated or my family would be. And a lot of sheriffs and police chiefs don't have that ability. But owning my private company, when we sold it, we did good when we owned it. We sold it very well, and it gives me that independence that allows me to make the decisions that are the right decisions, not political decisions.
No, and I appreciate
Good.
that, Sheriff. Not everyone has that benefit, that luxury, right? But what should never be a condition of, of wealth or just being steady or even struggling is compromising your principles. So I appreciate you saying that, because it is true. There's, and we won't get too deep on this, but as far as we need to, certainly being present. You connected early, you talked earlier on about connecting with the community, right? So, and that resonates a long way. Obviously, people know who you are in your community. You've been elected over and over again. Unopposed is very impressive. There's a level of respect, but there's also a level of understanding. So in that, when you're in the office of the sheriff, and not to necessarily call out anyone, but certainly different states are going to operate differently, even counties within Florida. And I do want to get into more detail about the programs that you have helped develop for your inmates, because I think that's very impressive as well. But just as far as the interactions daily, what do you feel kind of is different and stands out? Because there's that level of respect, but people are still going to commit crimes, right? And it's good that it's a lower crime rate. But how do you see that? Did the overall tenor change once you entered office, or it took a few years for everyone to kind of get a feel of, well, okay, you're not going to tolerate that. You're no nonsense. You're establishing it, but you're fair. Again, where did that take place? And did you have to fight that early on in your career?
So yes to all of that. So the reality is, when I came in, here's my goal. I wanted to change the culture in the foundation of this agency so that no matter who the public elects in the future, the team will know what's supposed to be done to be a professional, cutting edge law enforcement agency. Even if the public elects sometime in the future some knucklehead. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm grooming somebody, or I should say mentoring somebody to take my place when I finally decide it's time to hang it. But hopefully that's not anytime soon.
Sure.
But yes, I mean, what you find is that even though you got input from everybody in your team, from full-time employees at all different levels to volunteers, there are people that put roadblocks in front of you because they think, well, I've been here 20, 22 years or 20 years, and I'm going to be here when you're gone. And so they put roadblocks in, and you have to figure out a way to work around that. I did not fire anyone when I came in as sheriff. I had made that commitment when I was running. Now, I did demote some and I reassigned some. And within 6 months, they all decided that this wasn't a place for them. So it resolved itself for those people. But you still have the people that do the roadblocks. And you have to try to mentor them and educate them. And sometimes they're just not going to jump on board. And I had a few of those. And it took about the first term for those people to decide they had their time to retire and retire. So can I tell you that we're 100% everybody's on board? No, I don't think you're ever going to get that. But I can tell you that probably 90% of my team is on board. I've hired almost 100 brand new positions, not just turnover, new positions in 8 years because, like I said before, we're an underfunded, understaffed agency, and I work with the county commission and the city of Palm Coast, our biggest city, which we police under a contract. And so to the people here in this agency now, probably 2/3 don't even know and never heard of those people that I was just talking about.
Sure.
Because they're long gone.
Yeah.
But what they do know is that we're a cutting edge agency. I'm in a brand new 52,000 square foot building. It's 2 years old now. All my heavy duty equipment, Bearcat, Mobile Command Center, our patrol boats, all of that's brand new. The fleet turns over roughly every 4, maybe 5 years in some cars, depending on the mileage and the condition. But we have systems in place. We have cutting edge technology, a lot of technology that we use. The community supports us. You know, when I was in Orange County, one time in 23 and a half years, did I go up to pay my lunch bill and somebody had paid it. This happens all the time in this county, not just to me, but to our deputies that are in the field. They go to pay and somebody, and they don't even know who it is, paid it. And so that's the kind of communities. You know, across the agency, I hear about the vacancies, can't find people and so forth. And I'm not the highest paid. Now, I'm not the bottom either. You know, I'm probably second in our 4-county area as far as pay. But I have no vacancies. In fact, I'm 12 overhired in my law enforcement division, and I'm either 2 or 3 overhired in my detention, and I have waiting lists on both. And October 1, I just got approved for 12 additional deputy sheriffs. So basically,
Nice.
they're already hired. And then I'll overhire again because it takes so long to fill positions, train people, that when you do have somebody retire or career change and leave, I don't have a 3, 4, 6 month lag time for employees. And so, but I think it's a combination. If you set the right vision and the right culture and the right tone, it all starts from the top. So my employees know what I will tolerate. Okay. And I talk to all of them because they're out there. They represent not only the Flagler County Sheriff's Office, but under Florida law, they're the alter ego of the sheriff because I can't go to every call. So I appoint deputy sheriffs. And so they are specifically representing me when they are on that scene. So they might as well be the sheriff at that moment. That's the conversation I have with the employees. I also say, you know, I won't tolerate excessive force. I've been shot. I get it. I know the dangers out there. I still go on patrol on Friday nights. I write my own ticket. I make arrests. Now, I will admit to have some help writing those arrest reports because I haven't written what we call a 707 or a drunk driver 767 arrest report, you know, not that often. So I have to have, you know, they got to mentor me a little bit on that. But, you know, they know that I won't accept excessive use of force. We're not going to be the punching bag. But the minute you have to de-escalate. As I've been sheriff, we probably could have legally used deadly force at least 12 to 15 times. We used it one time. And just because you can legally do it doesn't mean it's the right decision.
Sure.
But I tell all my deputies, I don't want you to take any chances. You're going home at night to your family, and I don't want to, you know, have to attend your funeral. But if we can de-escalate it, that's what we want to try to do. And in the one case where we did shoot a guy, we shot him 7 times. They didn't kill him, so I think they need to go back to the range. But they did a phenomenal job because he was a passenger in a car. He was a known fugitive. He pulled a gun immediately. They stopped him and pointed it at a deputy sheriff. And the deputies, there was 3 on the scene. All 3 of them fired. They didn't hit the driver, which was amazing, and just hit the bad guy. And then they kept ordering him out. He was still holding the gun and he wouldn't come out. So they finally got him to throw the gun out. What they didn't know was we had paralyzed him. He couldn't get out. He was paralyzed from the waist down. And they immediately, this is all on body cam, they immediately went into saving his life and trying to talk him down to, throw the gun out. And then when they realized he was paralyzed, and the paramedics in there and doing life saving, and they saved his life between the deputies and the paramedics in the hospital. But he's in state prison now. You don't want to be in state prison to begin with, but you certainly don't want to be there paralyzed.
Sure.
And that's where he is because he made a very bad decision. And what I told the media, you point a gun at a deputy sheriff, you're going to get shot. That's the bottom line.
And it has to be, right? And so do you feel like for your team, the de-escalation, and I can't even imagine, being in a situation like that, never being in law enforcement myself, a deep and great respect for you and others, even before doing this show, but certainly, my company being around the sheriffs at conferences and at offices and all that. But in that, do you see it as a form of process and the individual themselves, because I'm sure that's got to be a tough thing for everyone to understand and then not act on it. So what would you tell those listening and watching? What is the best way to if you can kind of synthesize that down to what is the best way to approach not overreacting and needing to de-escalate?
Well, first thing, it starts with your hiring process. So you have to hire the right people. If you're just hiring to fill positions because you have vacancies, or if you lower your standards, because some agencies have done that, I won't do that, then you're going to set yourself up for a failure eventually. May not happen right away, but it's going to happen. And I can point to agencies around the country and in the state of Florida that's come true. So it starts in the hiring process. Then it goes to your training. What kind of training do you do? And it also goes to what kind of in-service training do you do? And we do a lot of de-escalation training. We do a lot of how you interact and talk to people. Look, you can watch our body cams and we get in a high stress situation. There's going to be some 4-letter words, I guarantee it. But the agency knows that is part of our culture, is to try to de-escalate. And the employees understand that. We've had articles in the paper commending us for our ability to de-escalate. And but again, I want to emphasize, it doesn't come at your risk. If you can start negotiating with somebody to drop their firearm and stuff, and a lot of these cases were suicide attempts that we could have legally used it by the way the gun was being pointed. But if you're undercover or, behind cover or proper cover and stuff like that, and you don't have to use deadly force, if time is on your side most of the time. Now, there are times that it's not. My shooting was over 13 seconds, so things change very quickly. But I think it's the culture of the agency, and that starts from the leadership.
So if you talked about technology, we talked about trends. I always love when the sheriffs like you talk about cost saving measures, because at the end of the day, it's the public dollar, it's the taxpayer dollars that fund us, fund the work that we do. And you've got a fairly robust jail with 400 beds, an average daily population of 200 plus. I know from my conversations with Scott and others that you're not particularly shy about taking a look at things that will save dollars in your county. And I know crime corrections is one of those areas which you're able to do that. Tell us about it a little bit without being too,
Sure.
kind of bad.
So you're right. I'm a taxpayer too in this county, so I get it. As an elected official, I'm a steward of taxpayer money. My budget next year will be $56 million, so that's not a small amount of money. But I'm also a unique sheriff because I also have a business background. So I started a company, grew it to $3.5 million a year in revenue, 120 employees, and sold it to a national firm. So I look at things, and my team, especially my executive team and our appointed ranks, they know the word ROI. return on
Hmm.
investment, because I look at things that way because of my business background also. And so one of the things that I looked at was in the jail was our inmate medical costs. Now, what's unique in this county, and most counties don't do it this way, is that while I have in the jail, I'm responsible for the jail medical in the jail, uh, and anything that goes on with the inmates in the jail. But not in my budget, but in the county budget is outside medical costs. So if we have to transport an inmate to the hospital or to the dentist or someplace that we can't do it with our in-house medical team, that bill would go to the county. So it didn't affect my budget per se, but affected me as a taxpayer, and it affected me as what money is available that could come to my budget if we were overpaying for jail inmate medical. And, the law says I have to provide medical. There's lots of people in my community don't have health insurance, so it kind of frosts me a little bit that I have to, do this high level of medical for an inmate when I know I've got citizens that don't even have health insurance. And the other thing that I know is in a jail, generally the people that you get in the jail are not your most healthy people. They have addiction issues, whether it's drugs, narcotics, whatever it is. And they probably haven't been to, most of them haven't been to a doctor in a long time. So I started looking at this, and what was happening was we would transport them to our local hospital. Local hospital, because there was no controls on them, would run every test under the sun. Quite often they would put them in the, admit them. Now they are costing me money because I got to keep a deputy sheriff there guarding this inmate. And then they would send a bill to the county and the county would just pay it. Okay. So it wasn't like an HMO, you got to get approval. I mean, it was crazy. And so the Florida Sheriff Association has a partnership with Prime to basically be the HMO of your jail medical outside. So they negotiate contracts, they vet the bills that are coming in to make sure they're not overcharging or charging double. I mean, the list goes on and on what they do. And this actually is a good example of people doing roadblocks on me too, because I tried to get this through, you rely on people. So you give direction, they come back with all the reasons why not to do it. Okay. And I changed out my jail division chief. And one retired, the other one I changed out that I inherited. And so ultimately, I got all the right pieces in there. And we had Prime once again give us an estimate on what they think they could save. And I said, okay, we're implementing this. I had to get the county involved because they had to sign part of the agreement because technically the bills go to them. And it's just been amazing, the savings to the county. I'm talking millions of dollars that they're not having to pay to the local hospital. And now the local hospital is being more stingy on all the tests that they're ordering because they're not getting a blank check anymore.
Yeah.
They're still getting great medical care, but they're not running everything just because they can. So our agency has won two awards in a back-to-back from Prime. Hopefully we're on track again this year.
Yep.
For that. And so, it's been a huge partnership between the Sheriff's Office, Prime, and Flagler County Board of County Commissioners. And I didn't see a dime of that in my budget. It was just the right thing to do. And any sheriff, quite frankly, I'll put a plug in for Prime. Any sheriff that's not doing this is missing the boat, quite frankly. And it's unfortunate it took us so long to get in there, but that goes back to those roadblocks I had to, overcome.
No, absolutely. And Sheriff, I appreciate that. I was just on a call prior to this one, and at this point, we've obviously been able to refine our approach on that. And I've been saying the same thing now for a couple of years, but let the numbers tell the story. We always ask for give us a set of bills, we'll review them. If you have a Medicaid rate from a county hospital, we could still find some savings potentially just based on duplicates and and other related charges where services could be bundled. But and we're going to tell you, if you have a good solution in place, that's great. We're going to give you a thumbs up and move on because, yeah, it goes back to the county, right? It's, certainly living in the county, paying into that with your tax bill and just general services. But I love the element of just being of service and being of value. That's the part that we can do. While we serve a nationwide client base from work comp, auto, personal injury, the corrections piece specifically for offsite medical, we can see the impact, right? And yes, it's a pleasure to present that award to you. And you're trending in a very positive light this year as well. So
Well, that means I have six inmates. But
yeah, I was going to say it's a necessary evil in that, but it still comes down to this exists, right? In pretty much every jail setting. It's a matter of how you do it. So, if anything, and I'll get off my little platform here, appreciate your words. I know you've said that unprovoked to others before, and it's always something that it's genuine. It can be supported. It's proven. We're going to continue. Just this week, it ended up in my mailbox. I knew it was coming up. I was on vacation last week, and I got a text. Wisconsin Sheriff's Association signed. So, we want to go just like we did with the Florida Sheriff's Association. Now it's like, oh, wait a second, there's something out there. Right. So, we can continue to do that and make it be known to others with 3,100 give or take counties in the United States. I'd love to be in every single one if we could, because that value and that opportunity. So again, I appreciate your kind words. And
well, let me just add to that if I can. I think we're running 60 to 70% reduction in the cost being charged through negotiation. And for your sheriffs or police chiefs that may run a jail that are listening to this, it doesn't cost you anything because you guys get paid based on the amount of money that you save, a percentage of that.
Yes.
And so it's a no-brainer to do this because you're doing it. It's not hitting your budget.
Yep.
It's the county budget. In fact, it's saving the county 60 to 70% of the bills that would normally they would have been just stroking a check and sending in. So
absolutely. So yeah, why wouldn't you do it there?
Right.
Sheriff, we could continue probably for hours. There's so much to go through. I think for this episode, and I'll do it now, but not hold you to it given schedules in the future, but definitely would love to have you back on because I really would like to dig in more to the programs that you have helped foster and put into your jail about, giving purpose to the inmate, right? Giving them skills, be it cooking, putting the uniforms together, and there's others that I think more folks need to hear about it. It's one of those things where can inmates be rehabilitated? Yes, if someone cares, right? If someone has a vision and a goal and wants them to not revisit and be ongoing, can they be of service once they get out? People make mistakes, and I appreciate what you have done, and I know it trickles down to your staff as well, and I've met a number of them before in person and on calls. You have to care about what you're doing, and you truly care about what you're doing. You wouldn't be in this 50 years if this was a matter of saying, I can get my motorhome, I can be with my wife, I can see my grandchildren, I can do all these things. So it means a lot to me to have individuals like you and others care about what you're doing and wanting to make change, make for a better place.
Well, thank you. I sold my motorhome, by the way, when I was elected sheriff.
I'm not going to use that again. Yeah.
There's no time to use it. But, I'd love to do that because we really didn't focus on a lot of what's going on in the jail. And maybe we could tag team the next one with my division chief, Dan Ingert, myself.
Absolutely.
And you guys, because I did a national search for him and hired him specifically to change the culture of my jail because the jail just wasn't where I wanted it to be. We are there now. In fact, we just did another program. We now have cats, or well, they're really kittens in our jail in partnership with the Flagler Humane Society. And here's what the inmates told me, because I walked in there and I'm asking, they're in our female side of the jail. And I said, so what do you think about the cats in the jail? And these are inmates that are in one of our programs, trying to turn their life around. And some of them said, this is the first time I had to be responsible for something besides myself, getting my drugs or whatever. And so, and I went around the room and I asked each one that, and they all had a little bit of different focus on why it was so important, but it's teaching them skills and responsibility for when they leave our facility. And, so we did, I think, a news release on it. And the headline was, if I remember correctly, the green roof goes to the cats or something like that. We had a little play on it. No, the cats are the new inmate at the green roof. That's what it was. I think it's important to highlight what's going on inside a jail.
Yes.
Because those are the invisible heroes, just like the communication center employees. Nobody sees them. In the jail, you don't see them unless you got arrested.
Right.
And you really didn't want to meet them at
No.
that point. But they're an important part to how we've done our crime reduction. So I'd love to do another show. We'll just set it up.
Absolutely. Yeah. It deserves its own separate episode so we can get into it, because these just fly by. We're 50 minutes into it already, and we're just getting started. But with that, Sheriff, I appreciate you. We've been able to meet in person over the years, so it's always a pleasure. Again, thank you for making the time today to join us. Sheriff Stanek, as always, I appreciate your time. And yeah, we'll be in touch, and we'll get something scheduled in the future. And everyone listening, hopefully you got something good from this conversation. Again, we're going to continue to broadcast different topics with those individuals that are making a difference in the law enforcement community. That's what this show's about, as the badge turns. Until next time, thanks everyone, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Sheriff. Bye, Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott with Prime Health Services and Prime Corrections. And when I'm not hosting with Sheriff Stanek, I wanted to take a few moments and talk about our offsite inmate medical cost containment solution. So if you're running a jail and you have to take an inmate offsite for medical treatment of any type, have you ever paid full bill charges for that expense? Hopefully not. But if you have, let Prime help you out. So what we do every day, we receive many bills. I'll give you one example of a bill we just processed this week. This was for a county in Florida. This was for an air ambulance treatment. The total bill, $53,256. Through our scrubbing process and negotiations, we were able to reduce that bill down to $8,447.26. That's a savings of 84%. So if you are looking to save on your offsite inmate medical expense, contact Prime. You can reach us via a link below. You can also send an email directly to corrections@primehealthservices.com. That's corrections@primehealthservices.com. Let Prime show you, and let Prime help you save money. Thanks, and have a great day.